Hey, this is Silas for Rantathon. I'm not quite sure what this section is going to be called. Maybe just the I see movies or I see good things. Pretty much, I'm going to discuss just some thoughts I had from watching the Fate of the Furious movie. Some of my friends had tickets to a free screening of the movie, and they invited me to attend with them. It's a movie that I'd been planning on watching. I've watched all the other Fast and the Furious series, and it took some time to accept what it is. It's a movie about cars that go vroom, things that go boom, with decent stories in it. And which one? Even Tokyo Drift. Okay, Tokyo Drift was the one where I say, okay, the story was horrible, but it was still amazing cars. I was really a fan of the Need for Speed drift game at the time, so I really liked the drifting mechanics. And horrible may actually be too harsh of a term. I think my main thing was the accent of the character in it. He just had a less memorable story. But I have noticed something with certain films. There's of certain films of late have been throwing in little nuggets of introspection, of depth that I think are overlooked by general reviewers. And I kind of wonder what certain films would be if people explored these topics a little further. Like this might be a slight spoiler, more will be coming later, I'll give a warning of that. But for example, with this film, I had been talking to one of the friends that I went there with about how I feel information is pretty much the only thing you can convey, and one of the characters in the film actually says that, starts talking about how are these connections actually there? How is family formed? Is family really a real thing that you're feeling, or is it just a is it just an after effect of conveying information? So that's actually discussed in there, and in the light of family. So just the biological action to the actual knowledge part, the brain. What does that? What part does that play into it? So getting back to this, I thought it was entertaining enough, and I decided to go watch this film. Take the invitation to go watch this film with my friends. It was also the birthday of the person who invited me, so I got this toy. Well, after a few other options, I got this toy and did some MAGA decals on it, some wall things, which is kind of because we have a shared interest in politics, and this kind of tied into the cars in the film. I had a few different options to pick from, but ended up picking this toy that was this red Dodge Charger. At least I thought it was a Charger. The New York Auto Show, which I'm planning on attending, is also starting this week, and we get there and they're sitting there for the movie, and a kid in front of us starts talking about the Dodge Demon. No, one of our friends starts talking about the Dodge Demon, and a kid in front of us, a younger kid, says starts getting into the conversation bit. So we're going back and forth with this Dodge Demon. The Dodge Demon also happens to be in the movie, which I find out later was also one of the vehicles which was debuted at the auto show. Which now, if you're a fan of vehicles, this is something you probably know. I'm not that deep into car culture, but they tied in the launch of this movie with that vehicle, which now is actually the fastest street legal vehicle. I think 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds, which is insane. And then back to the Tokyo Drift thing, one of my friends who was there was is a lot more into vehicles, into car culture than I am, and he was telling me that in something like Tokyo Drift, there was a Japanese drifter that was driving so well. He was driving too well that the directors told him to drive worse because him driving as well as he did with the drifting didn't play that well to a movie audience. So I think this is an interesting example of just how people come to this place for different reasons to watch different things and get different things out of it. If you like cars, just simply the cars could be something entertaining. I personally like other topics, like hanging out with my friends, of course, but also other topics like that small nugget about why are familiar relationships put together. And it also just shows a level of synchronicity. I think when you start living your life in a certain way, you go out and you start following the ideas that you're doing and the thoughts, and you get to certain situations. Okay, I'm kind of rambling. That's it. Let me get back to the movie. A cool thing about this movie was we sat there and it was a free screening for. So it was in a movie theater, but immediately no previews. So it just started directly into the movie, no previews or anything. And this is a topic I'll come back to. Things are there for a purpose. When you pay for a movie, people understand you've paid money, you have a captive audience, so other movies, other theaters pay the people who are the movie theaters and the people who are showing the movie to advertise their movie. In a free case, there was no reason to advertise to the people that were there. Okay, back into the movie. The movie itself, I liked it. It was entertaining. The plot was decent. There were some cliche moments that I think I probably understand more from just knowing more about movies, going to the animation, going to the production part, just researching myself more into how movies are made and why they're made and certain things. It was also rather low on the political or the social commentary. It wasn't as preachy as some films tend to be. And I guess some films, that's what you're going there for, but as I said, this is a vroom boom movie with some feel good nods to the people watching, but it's not something you expect to have social rah rah commentary involved in. Let me be more specific of what I mean there. I mean, certain films have a tone or certain characters that they expect you not to take this character too seriously, not to judge this character as you would yourself or other people in your life. So if they're preaching to you about something you should do in your life, and then in the next scene do something that if you did or if somebody else did would be considered a horrible human being, then I just don't buy it. Okay, definitely spoilers. Spoilers are going to be included in this from this point on. I suggest if you like any of the Fast and the Furious movies, go watch this. I would consider it to be one of the better ones. If you like cars, go watch this. Pretty much if you're going to go watch this, go watch this. If you think, hey, might as well watch it, go watch it. So anyway, spoilers from here on out. There was a few things going in the movie that I thought, yeah, this is going to be this. Like, most people know this already. Vin Diesel turns against his group. For some reason, he's drawn into a group by Charlize Theron's character, who is this Uber hacker. Which, okay, now, let me just mention this. There's a lot of things people are talking about certain shows. I said it actually in the last video I made about these kind of shows where it's like this small, svelte woman doing all this super ninja things. But I think in something like Fast and the Furious, it's already such a fantastical premise that it didn't bother me too much that, yeah, it's Charlize Theron, who's supposedly this amazing hacker, where the other Fast and the Furious, small, very attractive British um, person who I don't know, I can't even think. Okay, her name was, I don't know the character's name, but there's a line in the movie where the character asks Tyrese's character and Ludacris's character, which again, Roman was Tyrese's character. I don't know the name of Ludacris's character, but she asked them their last name. I think her name was Kennedy or something British. They're hitting on her, ask her the last name. They don't know. I don't know it either. I don't think it's ever been mentioned in the film. If it has, it's probably been written down when you're seeing her on screen, in whichever Fast and the Furious she was first introduced in. They probably listed it, but I don't know it. But that's what these characters are. These characters are just people. They're just these archetypes of characters. So I can fall into the fact that Charlize Theron's character has this twisty kind of dread thing. I'm thinking like, okay, somebody's going to complain that that's culturally appropriating black people's hairstyle. I say black people and not African because, as some of you may not know, Charlize Theron has a South African heritage, so she's technically one of the most popular African American women in the world. We laughed at this thing. It started off in Cuba, and the guy said something about, instead of saying they're going to race the quarter mile, he's like, we're not going to race a quarter mile, we're going to race the Cuban mile. And we kind of just had this running joke thing about like adding Cuban to everything on top of it. And that's the kind of thing they do. They go to different areas and do the different flavor, but you still see it's the same thing. Different things happening for the same reasons, or the same things happening for different reasons. This is, I think, an ongoing thing that I'm seeing happening in the world. So back to this movie review that I'm trying to get through. Dom, which is Vin Diesel's character, is shown something by Cypher, which is Charlize Theron's character, on a phone. This little trick done for my car's broken down, Dom goes to help. And that's what gets him to switch. That's what gets him to flip sides. That's what gets him to join her side and help her do whatever nefarious plans she wants to do, which turns out to be stealing this EMP to begin with, and eventually stealing this nuclear football for this nuclear launch codes. So I think the only thing that could get Dom's character to leave his racing family in favor of whatever Cypher wanted him to do would have been Paul Walker's character, Brian, his family that he has with Vin Diesel's sister's character, which is Mia, and their child. So I'm thinking, yeah, this is going to be what was shown to him on the phone that got him to switch. So I was wondering, it would have to be blood over the family that they shared through experiences, which I think is part of the theme of this movie. Is blood thicker than water, or is information what creates emotion, or is this a biological thing? So we were thinking, since Paul Walker's character Brian actually just drove off in the film and is not dead in the film's universe. So despite the fact that Paul Walker left this racing family to start his biological family, we thought there was a chance that they may be CGI Paul Walker in this film. But it turns out that it was a lady from The Fast and the Furious where Letty, which is Michelle Rodriguez's character, was supposedly dead. So he had something with this lady, and turns out she had a kid, so it was his kid. So we were kind of right, it was direct blood family. And there was some foreshadowing of this. And this is one thing that, for me, with films in general, I think that has ruined the most, not even understanding the craft of films, but understanding the pacing. How, when you have such a limited amount of time to tell a story, pretty much every scene is on there for a purpose. There's all these things where they foreshadow things. Like, so despite being having my eyes open for this, as I said, the guys who found this later on in the movie were the character of Decker, which is Jason Statham's character, and his brother. The second I saw his brother on the screen, being shown, a photo being shown of him on the screen at Mr. Nobody's secret site, I knew he was actually going to be in the film. What I didn't get was earlier in the film when Dom had decided he was going to help Cypher, and the Rock's character calls him. He's doing something with some electronics, and they show the cross. And I thought, oh, this is just a callback to the cross being in the old thing, and didn't notice when he hung it up on the jail cell where his son and the mother of his son were being held. I don't know her name. It was the Brazilian cop from that, I think, Fast and the Furious 5. This is kind of this magic trick people do where they do, not a magic trick, but they show you what you're doing. They kind of introduce things. There's not too many things that are just added into films later on without having something foreshadowing in the previous screens. I mean, previous shots. And you see this, another really good channel you guys should check out on YouTube is Red Letter Media. Do great movie reviews, and they break down some of these things. And the Best of the Worst series is where they talk about movies that aren't really that good, and they show you learn a lot about how to make movies. And they have these small little shorts before and after and during they're doing these reviews that make it really entertaining. That those little shorts that they're doing that continue throughout their episodes are actually more entertaining than many of the movies they actually review. But anyway, back to the movie. So now there's a lot of things I could complain about this movie. But though this may be due to my change in focus, I did appreciate that the core aspect of a lot of these films, a lot of the Fast and the Furious series, has been the importance of family. The second I saw that Vin Diesel's character Dom had a kid, I thought they were going to have his name be Paul, or actually Paul for Paul Walker. But it turns out in the film that the mother gave him the middle name, and in what I imagine could be considered a touching moment to some people who are not as jaded as I am about certain things, she says that she gave the child the middle name and wanted to wait until after Dom's honeymoon and things had settled down, and she would tell him about the kid and have him give him the first name. So later on in the movie, Dom names the kid Brian, which is Paul Walker's character's name in the film. And I think this could be some foreshadowing to a future series, transitioning it over to a younger generation of both moviegoers and actors to have Brian Toretto as a driver. And say that his kid is now a teenager, he's involved in some new street racing thing in his high school or something, and then they can transition Fast and the Furious series over to something else. But let me try to remember where I was before I went on this tangent. Back to the family thing, yes. Family is a big important thing in this, and that's something that's not really discussed in a lot of films, and I think to me that's one thing that kind of keeps me coming back to this series. they do focus on family. They might have more contrived ways on how the families are organized. Yes, these are also some very criminal people. They're breaking all kinds of laws. They're killing people left and right. Although a lot of the people they kill are trying to kill them, but some of these accidents and some of these things are really harmful things going on. You're like, okay, a lot of people are dying there, but that's off screen, not really shown. Part of the whole movie thing. Kind of how like superheroes, when superheroes save people and have these huge fights, you see these massive death tolls, which another thing that was touched on in Batman vs Superman series, he was taken to Congress because that whole battle he had was killing a lot of people. As we talk about superheroes, a lot of situations in this film, as I said before, I could complain about the female characters being superheroes, but the Rock's character is also just lifting people and throwing them around like absurd strength level things. So that's also superhuman. So I like this kind of blending between realism and fantastical ideas, but keeping that keeping that keeping on the whole idea of family. That's been a core part of the Fast and the Furious series. Now it's definitely not a family I'd want to be a part of. I don't like cars that much. They're also very, very violent. The crime that goes on. But it's a film. Okay. I'm going to start winding this down. This is a new format I'm trying out where I just read through the whole video and then do some limited editing as I come back in and fill in parts, which is similar to my writing process on the blog, which you should check out. But you want more of this? I think I might actually do more of these, kind of release these IC, because on my blog I release these IC good things where I just post things I like and see if you saw some of the things that I saw in it that were positive. If you have negative things to say about it, you can say that too. But yeah, go check out The Fate of the Furious. I actually hope they're going to make more. I don't even consider it a guilty pleasure. It's a pretty cool thing. It's got decent cars in it, decent action, decent pacing, decent speed, fast, furious. It kind of keeps that in there. Okay, but one more thing. There are some situations of how the characters accept having the kid in there and this whole thing. It could have gotten a lot more preachy than it did. Had some issues. And I could imagine myself being more critical about some of the treatment of having, oh, these powerful women somehow defeating all the men. But no, these are just characters. This is a fantastical thing. I had sufficient level of, what's that thing, suspension of disbelief throughout the movie. So yeah, there was just one thing in particular. Last thing I'm adding was I was thinking with the Lamborghini that Roman wanted. There was one scene towards the end when there was a huge explosion, fireball, where the cars kind of come around to protect a character. Okay, I already said spoilers. The cars come around to protect Dom from this huge explosion, and the car that comes in front of him has a really high ground clearance. So the flames would have definitely gone right through there and roasted the kid. But I'm thinking that would be the one time when the Lamborghini would have made sense because that would actually had a low enough ground clearance to stop the flames from hitting him. And one more thing, I said this was going to be the last thing, but another thing, I don't know if this is just in this film because of the nature of the cars thing, but they've had movies where they show guys walking away from flames, from explosions, being like a trope thing that happens in movies, which I think it definitely is. I think another cool cut thing to do of just cut scenes from different films where this happens is people jumping out of vehicles and rolling. Maybe you could even just do it just Fast and the Furious. Those were the scenes that had me laughing the most. When Dom would just bail out of a car, characters would just jump out of the car and do things and just be unharmed. Those were points that really took me out of the suspension of disbelief. But anyway, that actually was the last thing I'm going to talk about. Thanks for listening. Like, share, and subscribe. Tell me what you think of this new format or the film if and when you watch it. And come back for more. Thanks.